Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, or this afternoon, actually, for Searching for Visionary Futures, the final closing event for DiverseWorks Visionary Futures exhibition curated by myself. It featured six amazing artist visions. Um, I'm Ashley DeHoyos. I'm the curator at DiverseWorks. Pronouns are she, her. I also use they, them. I have black curly hair, currently wearing a blue shirt, sitting in my home of Dayton, Texas, streaming from you. Um, and I have the pleasure of being in conversation with Antonius Bui, Lovie Olivia, and Preetika Rajgariah, as well as S. Rodriguez and Y2K today to talk a little bit about their projects as well as the process for the exhibition and the themes. My name is Ashley. Before we get started, I'm going to give a brief land acknowledgement, and just to acknowledge, take a moment to respectfully acknowledge the original inhabitants of the land in which we reside. Today, we gather with you currently in a land called Houston, Texas, which lies in the ancestral territories of the Karankawa, Atacapa, Ishak peoples. We also recognize the native peoples that share the Southeast Texas region, including the Tuankawa and the Pulatecan. And we also acknowledge this land as occupied, unceded territory and pay tribute to them. In the chat, for those of you who would like to do so, please acknowledge your ancestors or acknowledge the land in which you're zooming in from, and take a moment to introduce yourself. Because we are streaming on a digital platform, and because a lot of the work that we have done together for Visional Futures is from a digital perspective, we did want to share Adrian Wong's digital land acknowledgement, in which it says, since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, we take this moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded in the technology, structures, and the ways of thinking we use every day. We're using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities or communities of color. Even the technologies that are central to much of the arts we make, leaves significant carbon footprint, contributing to the changing climates and the disproportionately affected indigenous people worldwide. I invite you to join us in this acknowledgement and acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. Briefly, all of our artists are going to introduce themselves individually. Their projects and their links to the projects will be dropped in the chat. There is a live transcript option for today's Zoom. If you would like to use that live transcript, you can find the button at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe to our channel for future programming from DiverseWorks. And with ado, we'll get started. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, this will be an informal conversation. So please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A option, or if you're streaming from YouTube, we do have a DiverseWorks staff member who is monitoring the chat, so we'll feed those questions to us. So quickly, let's go ahead and have all the artists turn on their cameras, and we're going to allow them to self-introduce and give a little bit about their projects. And today we're going to start with Antonius.
Hey, thank you so much, Ashley. Howdy, everyone. Thanks for being in this digital space of potentiality with us on this Sunday afternoon. My name is Antonius Bui, and I decided to orchestrate a series of guided meditations for visionary futures after reading one of the grounding texts of the exhibition, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. One of the author's biggest influences is Grace Lee Boggs, who just happens to be one of my greatest heroes. Her simple but powerful quote, "Transform yourself to transform the world," resonates with me more than ever throughout this ongoing pandemic. There is no going back to the deadly, unsustainable normal we once endured. And each of us play a part in building the just and equitable future we need. My hope is that the guided meditations provide audience members a reprieve from the brutal speed of capitalism, time and space to recenter, to deeply consider your unique contributions to this future we are collectively forming on a daily basis. Honoring the breath and bringing ourselves back into the body seems more important than ever as well, especially in a time where we are afraid of one another, simply because the virtue of our breathing. Before I share a part of one meditation, I'd like to thank the incredible team of Salesians who made collective ideation possible. Thank you, Teresa Bui, Kushbu Gulati, Jaslyn, Xiao Pham, Michelle Fung Ting, Kyoko Takanaka, Mimi Ju, and Jason Ting from the bottom of my heart. It feels incredible to be held in the arms of fellow APIA folks in this country during this time. It also feels wonderful to see our work be seen in the realm of healing, spirituality, wellness, health, because it's become so whitewashed and taken over by all these white people on social media. So now I'm going to share a brief part of a meditation with you all.
Remember who you are outside of societal conditionings and expectations. You are expansive beyond systems and institutions. You are a beautiful reflection of the elements, of the cycles of this earth. Of heart and soul. In your creation process, follow your intuitive rhythms, not an algorithm. Your power lies in you, not in what is popular, digestible, and sellable. Not the illusions of what you should be doing or what fear says. There is nothing to prove, no one to please or seek approval from. There is no competition when you are channeling from your authentic expressions. Here are affirmations that I use to bring myself back to my spirit when I feel doubt. You are welcome to repeat them to yourself if you feel called to, and as many times as you need to. I invite you to place your hands over your heart as you say these affirmations. I trust my wisdoms and magic, even when systems of domination have told me otherwise. I trust my inner abundance of ideas, my inner muse, and my visions. I trust my visions even when others do not understand them or criticize them. I do not let others' energies taint what feels intuitively aligned for me. Our intuition will guide us deeper into our truths and our unique flows.
Thank you so much, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Antonius. So next up would be Chandrika, who did their performance Crisis every weekend. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, Chandrika is not able to join us today. So you can see their work online at DiverseWorks.org or at our YouTube channel. And briefly, we'll move over to our next artist, which will be a joint collaborative collective called Two Dykes and a Knife, featuring Lovie Olivia and Preetika Rajgariah.
Hey y'all, what's up? So I'm currently in studio right now while we
Welcome to Lovie's studio.
one side of the studio. Yeah, so we're Two Dykes and a Knife. We're a collaborative force that chooses food as a way to, as a medium to collaborate with. As two individual artists ourselves, we found that food is one of the ways that we enjoy melting minds,
together, yeah.
making together. So for Visionary Futures and DiverseWorks, we put together this idea around a word, equitable, and sort of broke it into two separate parts, to equitable. And the idea was to create sort of an equal opportunity meal opportunity, art exhibition opportunity, since we had all been in quarantine for so long. So we created a gathering that would invite 6 people, in which we would serve 6 courses to them where they sat 6 feet apart. You want to take over?
Yeah, and what we just released a pretty great video that if you have a chance to view it, it's about 20 minutes and kind of shows you a peek of what happened at the video with the 6 guests and kind of what conversations took place. None of the 6 people knew each other, but we knew all of them. And we safely kind of conducted this really connecting experience where everyone had a different access point over food and food memory and access, and just they brought their own kind of
cultural histories,
Yeah.
cultural baggage,
and
cultural
narrative
ideas
to this
around
thing. Yeah.
food and access.
Yeah, so we are happy to take any questions because there's a lot of cool promotional stuff out there that we were really excited about.
Well, we'll get into a little bit more of the conversation with you both in just a few minutes. We're going to move over and let S. Rodriguez introduce themselves and their concepts behind the project.
Hey everyone, I'm S, and my piece, Rhizome, kind of deals with the idea of nature as a technology, gender as technology, and technology really as a tool, in addition to being a system. Yeah, I don't really know what more to say at this point. But if you want to check it out, it's on the DiverseWorks website, and I used a combination of sound, video, plants, and my computer to sort of create a narrative around survival and what that could look like in terms of a kind of like ecological post-colonial solidarity between human and non-human life forms. Yeah.
Thank you, S. And last but not least, we have Y2K, who is, yeah, there you are. Y2K, you want to introduce yourself and your project?
Hi, I'm Y2K. And I feel like in my project for DiverseWorks was technology, but the overall project is Y2K. It's kind of like this persona that I've created and like the world that she or they constantly live in. And it's like what I'm always creating with every project that I take on, basically. So Yeah, it was really cool doing technology and being able to put it into all of a really clean visual setting. This project in particular is like talking indirectly, I guess, about like breaking free from your queerness or like your, I don't know how to, that's like bad wording. um but yeah, it's like a really cool fetish film. I suck at talking about my work always, but you should check it out.
Well, all of the work that y'all have created has been really amazing to witness. And I think, you know, in the beginning, I approached y'all with a bunch of ideas. We had a bunch of conversations individually and sometimes collectively, where we were trying to think about like this whole idea of what the future could look like. And I think it's been amazing to like watch all of y'all process, because what I realized is that and inviting y'all to be part of Visionary Futures, I've also invited y'all to allow me into your dreams, kind of into your escapes. And that, I mean, obviously, like I've been thinking a lot about, for every utopia, there's also a dystopia. And part of the prompt for the exhibition was to think about survival and why we create. And I was wondering, you know, just to get into kind of the questions, like this, what does it mean for artists to really think about the future, and what does it mean specifically for y'all to think about this idea of BIPOC queer futurism and what legacies we're kind of creating for the future? And if anybody wants to answer, feel free. If not, I'll direct it to somebody. I think Lovie, Preetika. Okay. What about Antonius? You gonna answer?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, especially for all POC BIPOC folks, because our entire existence has been about finding unique, innovative ways to survive, thrive, and hold on to our most authentic selves. For me, one piece that really stuck out was S's, and really considering non-human survival as well, and how even as POC folks who do not oftentimes have as much access to green space, nature, as white people in America, to see that be brought into the conversation was so necessary and beautiful, and to understand like nature itself is one of the greatest technologies in the world, and we are going through this climate crisis, and it is fighting back for survival. And to us, it's a disaster, but to nature, like she's doing her thing, they're doing their thing in order to survive. And I think we can learn so much more from biomimicry as we begin to dream of a future.
Oh my God, I'm so flattered. Is it okay if I say something too? Or
yeah, go ahead.
Does anyone want to go? Okay, cool. Sorry, it's a little hard to tell between screens. I'm just like, I don't want to interrupt anybody either. But Antonius, that was so pretty the way you made my project sound. And I feel like personally, kind of I was tapping into the idea of utopia and dystopia, in the sense that I think that the kind of like utopian dystopian binary is so kind of fabricated, like in media and movies and books and stuff. But I don't necessarily think those things exist separately from each other, right? Like, and like you were saying, Antonius, I completely agree. Like I absolutely see nature as a tool and a technology, and its own force. And I think it's also kind of funny, because while we are living in this like dystopian climate crisis, nature is thriving, and like maybe this is a utopian version of survival for the kind of earth that, you know, we don't necessarily need to inhabit. And at the same time, I think a lot of us have lived through these kind of dystopian disasters, so to speak. I mean, the freeze a couple weeks ago was a complete disaster, and about as like cinematically dystopian as it comes. I mean, I don't think I've seen snow in Houston since I was like 5 years old. So anyway, yeah.
That was awesome, S. And I think it's good to piggyback on this idea of nature and like kind of segue into food and like what food is. Food as an immediate future, like consuming, metabolizing, using that energy to do whatever it is necessary to survive, right? And like this, and then the speculative future, like what does the future of food look like in the times that we're in and the climate crisis that we're in, the capitalist crisis that we're in, like access to food and what food is available to certain communities and groups of people. These are all the conversations that we like to prompt people to talk about. These are definitely things that we think about, like considering history and memory and giving honor to American chefs and like what American food actually is immigrant food, you know, and like without, you know, immigrant and transatlantic slave trade, there wouldn't be an American cuisine. It would be pretty bland and spiceless. So like all these ideas about the immediate future, meaning planting a seed, watching it grow, consuming that, and then the speculative future. Like I believe that the future of food is definitely in mushrooms, and also medicine is in the future of medicine is in mushrooms, and I also believe that insects. And so constantly trying to create food around these types of food, or meals around these types of foods that would inspire people to want to consume, you know, plant-based materials more. So yeah, that's sort of like thinking about it from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the exhibition, it was really great to see how each of your perspectives also associated with the conversation, because each of your practices are very specific in terms of the ways in which you make or process or experiment or experience. But it was also, I know early on, and I had a conversation with Antonius about this, was like, how do we create something where it does kind of just take away those boundaries that sometimes art has when we're putting things in a gallery. And I know, Antonius, that's where kind of your idea for collective ideation came from, because it was like, what if we strip all this down? Like, what if it's just, yeah, you know, for visionary features, like I was kind of throwing spaghetti at a wall for a while, basically. But I was like, what if we put, you know, something on a t-shirt? And that's part of the exhibition. So part of this also process for me was working with y'all to really think beyond what you know, a conversation of the future would look like. So it wasn't so direct. If any of y'all have maybe, and this is a great segue to Y2K, because like your work is very hybrid. It's part fashion, editorial, and film, and it does kind of break those barriers to where it's not just a piece that is like, there's so much more that you can see beyond the layers of the video. Like if you really step back and watch it, and like we talked a lot about in the office, cyborgs and cyborgism. So I'm wondering, in the ways in which you're working and the perspectives that you're bringing, like what are you hoping that the audience who doesn't do visionary futures kind of gets from the work?
I think that a lot of the time whenever I'm making any of like the worlds that I'm creating, or like living as Y2K just in my day-to-day life, is like part of the performance in a way, but also I don't know, I feel like whenever like technology to me is like a lot of the like imagery, like with the chains and like the cyborgs and like being like this genderless like being, and I created this like whole world that I live in, is like almost like an alternate reality to like what I want the world to be in the future. I don't really know if I'm answering your question at all.
No, this is good. No, yeah.
Okay.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about behind the scenes work, you know, and how you were kind of crafting? I mean, I think that what I'm trying to get at is there's so much in technology that on a surface level, like it could be glossed over, but I think that there is so much also behind the scenes that you thought of that really, in terms of, and even thinking about us as work, gender as technology, gender as people and things, yeah.
Yeah, I think with like a lot of the projects I do, I think about like just like giving, like I want them to be as queer as possible with like the events that I'm throwing, every film project that I've worked on, an art project. So like it's very important to me, and always very important to me that like like 80 to 90% of the people working behind the scenes are queer. And so I had like I had like queer makeup artists, queer stylists on the shoot, the people filming the shoot so happen to be queer too. That DiverseWorks brought, but it was actually the people that I was like looking into prior, so it all worked out perfectly. But yeah, it was just like, that's all very important to me, and I feel like it shows in the work, like because we're all fucking geniuses and we have so much talent, and like it's amazing whenever you put us all together, like what we can produce. Like that, I can't believe like we made that film. It's so cool.
Yeah, I just want to say shout out to Jay Clark and Frank Hernandez for filming. They did most of the filming for all of the work in Visionary Futures, but we are super excited. So there's a question in the chat that I'm going to propose, and then we'll kind of get back, because I think there's some connections interesting with Antonius' work about even bringing people together as an art form. But the question is, the person in the chat would like to know more about Antonius bringing in so many other artists. Have you done that before? And does that fit into your own individual artistic practice?
Yeah, thank you so much for saying all of that, Y2K. I'm gonna hop on that and really talk about how, for so many of us, our projects go beyond like the singular figure. Even if it's not blatantly said, none of my work would be possible without a team, without supporters, our ancestors. I do have a habit of bringing on other artists because I truly believe that collaboration is the future. And there's so much magic that goes with just gathering different minds, different generations, and seeing what can happen from that. And Y2K, I think you said earlier, like breaking away from your queerness, and you were like, oh, that sounds bad. But I don't think it sounds bad. I'm so glad that we opened up with your video piece, because you really broke away from like expectations of a queer artist. So often we see like cis, white, gay, male artists dominate the queer art world, and it focuses so much on like what happens in the bedroom. And you almost broke the floodgates for Visionary Futures and allowed us to touch upon our relationship to nature, communal gatherings around food, meditations, singing, Chandrika's like punk show, which I wish we got to experience in person. So I really thank you for breaking the boundaries of what a queer artist needs to be doing or is expected to be making.
Thank you. That's really sweet.
Yeah, I think that's what, I mean, I loved like the pairing of everybody and how it all kind of worked out in terms of the curatorial perspective, because it was interesting. And I think I talked to Lovie and Preetika about this, but realizing that Visionary Futures was a project that needed to tap into the senses. And so like food was important, as well as like all these other types of work. And it's really interesting how all the projects were also very performative too, or engaging or trying to engage conversations or other aspects. And so maybe Lovie and Preetika, you can talk a little bit about that sensory and that engagement aspect.
Go ahead and I'll finish.
I've been so quiet. Sorry, guys. I think I'm just like being a sponge a little bit, soaking up everything y'all have to say. Speaking of, I'm sorry, you're asking about the multisensorialness about,
I guess art, right? Like we're so used to visual art being just something we experience with our eyes. And as I know personally, as I've been pushing my my own work to be more interdisciplinary, this seems kind of like the collaborative seems like a branch off, a very natural branch, or kind of offshoot of that, because not everyone's a visual learner and not everyone's a visual person. So for TDOC, it's like we try to push ourselves as like for food, smell is first, right? So not only do you have like specific curated dishes that probe and touch people in like a memory sense, so and then smell becomes part of that, and it might even not be like something you can remember, but you don't know where that memory is coming from, but it just hits you immediately. And then the visual aspect of, we just have a lot of fun with presentation and plating and try to bring in the visual artist part of our individual practices. Texture is a huge part of our dishes as well. And then for Visionary Futures, the environment was so special. So all the sounds, it was in our backyard. It was literally the most beautiful weather day. We were all just like praying for not rain, because that can always just happen in Houston. And the space that we created, one of our dinner guests, I believe it was Harrison, talked about after how safe of a space it was, in which all of these people could really let down. And listening to the conversations that they had, I was really struck by their vulnerability. And that's like what art is about, right? Like contemporary art, in my opinion, should strike up connection and conversation and dialogue and what is it all about, right? So this part of like a social practice to our studio practice has been a joy. I don't know what your question was, but
no, that's good. I think it's like about sensation, right? And sensuality, meaning texture, smell, touch, the look of it, the gathering. We intentionally picked memories from each person that we had and actually tried to infuse those memories into each dish. So it was intentional to have the number 6 was very important because I believe in magic, and I like the idea of the hex and the hexagon being like this sort of kind of futuristic intention, and just kind of like the shape that the tables were in, which is also like this 6-sided spaceship. We had originally imagined that there would be a drone that would capture all of it, which I think they did get a little bit of overhang or whatever, but like just extremely intentional about what the dishes were made of, what they looked like, the very mirrored reflective plates, angled and sort of geometric shaped plates and dishes and things that you probably would forge yourself and like see in the future. So it was very important to create a visual experience, taste experience. Like I really do think that taste was like secondary. It was just very important to like have all those memorable spices from different countries, different backgrounds. Yeah, and so
taste was not secondary.
No, I mean, I think I think what y'all did was really beautiful. And I think focusing back on that word intentionality, like there was a lot of intention, and I think across the board in all of your practices and the ways in which y'all were working that showed up. So I'm curious for like S and Y2K and Antonius, what does intentionality mean for y'all as y'all are creating? Doesn't show up in your practice at all. I mean, I'm wondering, or is intentionality important for our futures? I mean, I think in some ways that like, I've been in conversations where I'm thinking about my next chapter, And so like, and creating space for intentional steps like motherhood or like the future for me to think about my own, you know, legacy and practice. So yeah, so does that show up in any of your work?
For collective ideation, I was very intentional about working with friends, people I've admired, and thinking about being able to pay them for their time, care, and labor, knowing that DiverseWorks was going to support us in every way possible, and thinking about all the artists who have lost opportunities and continue to do so in this ongoing pandemic. So I was very intentional about basically spreading the support and bringing in people who could really benefit from this opportunity, whether or not they've created guided meditations before, or if this has been something that they've been meaning to create. And yeah, I think it's a combination of intentionality and also allowing the universe to speak. The spontaneity of artwork leads to so much joy and surprise as well. So yeah, but in this case, I was very, very intentional.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, I feel like I was saying kind of like in the last time, it was with everything I do, I feel like my intention is always to like support the girls and support the queers. And like that's what I try to do with every project I'm doing, every event I'm doing is trying to put like pay us and put us in spaces where we're not usually seen or heard. And like that's a big part of the work I do, and that's always my intention and will always be my intention.
Yeah, I honestly kind of agree, like both Antonius and Y2K. Like I think for me personally, like I do a lot of collaborative work with my partner through Pairspace Books. And so when I'm doing like solo kind of projects, I try really hard to make sure that like it's very like me, or so I don't know, as far as intentionality, I think what I do is the most intentionally is just create the framework, right? So like, okay, if I am working by myself, I'm going to give myself a framework to work within. And if I am like working collaboratively, like with my partner or with other artists, I want to make sure it's like very, very like bringing other people in and like that, but to keep those two frameworks like really separate. So I can be like, okay, but like, am I actually doing this for me? And like, am I actually doing this for other people? I guess that's where it comes through.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes total, I mean, I love that you bring in the framework. I mean, I know part of the projects that, you know, each of my conversations with all of y'all have been like knowing kind of the time space that we're in and looking at the work that we're creating, like how does what you're doing in Visionary Futures also impact y'all for the future? And a lot of the language that we use was queer BIPOC futurism. And so I'm wondering, what does it mean to be a part of Visionary Futures, one? And then two, what, and this could be a separate question on its own, but what does BIPOC futurism mean to each of y'all?
What does BIPOC futurism mean? I feel like it's always been here. So for me, this whole project has caused me to really look at the past, which just, I struggle to say it because it sounds so cliche and it sounds like, oh, well, past and future. But honestly, it's like it's caused me to do a lot of like round thinking, so to speak. I've been thinking about time cyclically a lot lately as a way to combat capitalism and just like as a way to self-care, to be nice to myself. And yeah, I think that this project got to showcase all of us and bring light to queer BIPOC community that have been doing the work and have important things to say. And I was really ecstatic and humbled and just really happy to be part of it. So.
I think being part of Visionary Futures has really emphasized for me that the English language is not able to encompass what BIPOC futurism is. There's so much that English cannot express. There's so much knowledge and wisdom within our bodies, our hands, what we create. And yeah, I think English needs to catch the fuck up. And I wish Chandrika was here because I watched that video twice before this event, and there's this one line, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, it says, "Don't look at me, it's the revolution." And I love that it's like a refusal of singularity, a refusal of a singular leader in this revolution. And I think this group exhibition exemplifies that. Like, we are looking towards one another, our own communities, and everyone in the audience and beyond as well. Because this question of BIPOC futurism does not lay on our shoulders alone. It lays on all of our shoulders and the shoulders of white people who need to do more work as well. So that's what I'm thinking about.
S or Y2K, did y'all want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, I think, I don't know, I feel like we're always living in the future as like marginalized communities, in terms of innovation to like be able to survive. And I mean, just from, I don't know, like personally, I'm just like, I've been queer for a really long time. And I mean, I've been like modifying my body for a really long time, and like different things like that, you know, even just little things, right? Like haircuts or tattoos or makeup or what you wear to the club or like how you make your body look, feels very futurist to me. Or like, and then, you know, to go more like extreme, so to speak, like hormones or different kinds of like surgeries or like skin graft, just any kind of like bodily technology feels very much like the future was a long time ago, at the same time as, you know, saying that like the future is ahead of us, if that makes sense.
Can I get the question repeated?
Yeah, no, yeah. So the question was just kind of like, what does BIPOC futurism or queer futurism mean for you?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what it means, but I like it and I love it. Like I feel like I live in it, but I feel like I don't. One, I'm not like eloquent at all, so I don't know how to speak about my work, and it kind of sucks half the time because I feel like I do really cool work, but I never know how to talk about it, or like any of the worlds that it like exists in either. Like I just suck at speaking. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's totally okay. I mean, I even struggle, and like Chandrika asked me this. So part of Chandrika's project too was Time Zone, which is on our Instagram for those watching, which is developing a piece of art specifically. And even Chandrika asked me what I thought BIPOC queer futurism meant. And what I could come up with at the time too was that it's an intersectionality, it's an awareness that we all kind of exist in this space, and understanding that like the queer communities and communities of color are usually at the forefront of a lot of change, systemically as well as climate structural change. And there's so much innovation within that work, which I think this show does really acknowledge in terms of the breadth of the work that y'all are making and the themes and the context that y'all are creating in. So that's kind of where that question came from. We do have a question in the chat really quickly. And you know, throughout this project, originally this exhibition was supposed to take place in the Match Gallery. It was supposed to be an in-person show. Obviously, COVID hit. Even throughout the exhibition, I know myself and others, we had that Texas winter storm that we went through. There's been a lot of personal things that, like this early spring, just kind of, it felt like a cluster storm of experiences that I think could really isolate us, or that, you know, created more isolation and amongst a period of time. So the question comes from Robin and Jay. In isolation, what kind of connection to yourself or others was had with your project that otherwise wouldn't have been there?
Say again?
So the question is, in a time of isolation, what kind of connection to yourself and others was had with your project that otherwise wouldn't have been there?
So I think that our project was a direct response to the pandemic. Like, we became better cooks. We became more interested in food. We were able to develop our kitchen a little bit more, like buying different things to be able to successfully create the dishes that we dreamed of. And just literally practicing in the kitchen as much as we practiced in the studio, so that when the opportunity occurred, we were ready. So when you came to us and you told us the budget and you told us the time frame, like that's like carving possibilities out of ideas that we had. So we were, you know, after taking a trip this past summer, and learn a little bit more about spices and stuff, and learn a little bit more about culinary arts. By the time you came and asked us about Visionary Futures, we were like revved up and ready to go. And so without that time, without the budget, I can't say like how much support DiverseWorks, Visionary Future, Ashley herself, Ashley themselves, like literally put into. I can't imagine how much she put into each individual project with the amount of support we got alone. So it's just like, I don't know how you were such a superhuman to be in so many places at one time, because there were some times where we were just like, what are we doing? And then we would be like, oh, we have support. Like, we could just reach out. There's going to be support. And so I can't express enough how comfortable it is knowing that there's a budget. Like, just knowing that there's support that I can survive on. And that goes back to, you know, cooking as survival. Like, we literally had no gallery or museum shows. The ones that we had were canceled. So food became our source of survival. Eating, consuming it, and also creating it and giving it back to the world. So
the other thing I have to touch on again is just thinking about how, because everyone was been in isolation for the whole year, they came ready to talk. So like putting people, no matter, you know, they didn't care that they didn't know each other. I felt like people were ready to like have conversations. They were very open. They were very willing. That's all we asked that they did, was come hungry and come ready. And because they were starved of that the whole year before, pretty much, if you think about it. I mean, the event went like 2 hours longer than it was supposed to, because we were just like all so in it, because we had just been kept in isolation. And so coming together was really special.
Yeah, I think also something, I live in Austin and my family is from Houston. So I feel like something that was really cool with this project was like being able to do it in Houston. And like my family was very hands-on in the creation of technology as well. So that was a really cool thing that probably wouldn't, like, I think because of because of the pandemic and because they have more time now, they're not like working their schedules, like they could actually be more hands-on. And my dad like built the sets that I was like performing on and like took me everywhere I needed to go, like shopping. And it was like really amazing and beautiful and really cool, like how it like almost brought us like closer in like our adult lives and like we've ever been like my whole life growing up. So that was a really cool like thing that's came out of being in isolation. Also, like just the video itself, I think I'm very, whenever I like make music or make things, I'm making them to perform. And I did do a lot of video work, but I never made like a fully polished like music video-esque style video. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without like isolation and like the support from DiverseWorks and Ashley and Maya and Gabby and everyone that was involved. It was really amazing. Jen helping me with the landing page. Like it was amazing, all the support.
I will just say, having your parents there, like, I mean, even our photographers, Frank and Jay, said something to your parents, but I think, you know, when we're starting the Visionary Futures and, you know, we were behind the scenes, to see how involved your parents and how supportive your parents were was also just really beautiful. And thinking of like this future of like, you know, thinking it, going back to that queer BIPOC futurism and seeing how much you were supported. And like, I remember Frank and Jay pulling their parents inside and like, as them saying as queer people, like you don't see that a lot where parents are really supportive. And I think one of the things I've also noticed about most of the artists that are, you know, all of y'all that are in this exhibition is that y'all do have such strong support systems from your loved ones, that, you know, someone maybe either came in, like your dad Y2K came and helped out with the installation and built the stages. Preetika, I'm thinking about how your mom made paneer, and you know, Antonius, like just knowing your parents and your practice, and then also us, like your partner Sarah and Paris Space Books, and how like supportive y'all are in that collaborative process because of my history working with y'all. Like I think there's something that's really beautiful in the ways in which their support is also ushering your practice into the future. Did anybody want to answer the isolation question? Maybe Antonius or S. I think y'all two still hadn't gone.
I think that a lot of projects throughout the pandemic have felt like translations or sacrifices due to the restrictions. But as everyone has said, the endless support from you, Ashley, and the DiverseWorks teams has not made it feel like we had to sacrifice anything. In fact, you all allowed us time and space to push our practices in new, fulfilling directions. I think if anything, the workshop that Jaslyn, one of the guides that I brought in, it could have been really dynamic in person, but at the same time, it was wonderful through Zoom. And y'all provided closed captioning. We're so beautifully professional and eloquent about having everything in order. And I just wanna, two dykes and a knife. Yeah, that video, like, oh, everyone needs to.
Yeah, that was Jay. Jay and Frank, that was all them.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I watched it like twice before this event and almost cried just hearing.
I cried a lot.
I did cry. I cried like literally.
Y'all have me crying during all this.
Oh, and when Jane was talking about cooking with her mom who has Alzheimer's, but y'all created that. Y'all made that possible. So thank you.
Jane is a good friend of ours in New York, and they were here for a few months just because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And her mom has Alzheimer's, and but makes this amazing nai sauce is what she calls it. So we actually marinated king oyster mushroom fillets in her mom's nai sauce, breaded it and fried it like a catfish and gave it back to her. And that was like, we kind of surprised her with it.
And so her memory is like galvanized now because of the film, because of Visionary Futures, because of DiverseWorks. It's like common people becoming museum worthy. Like that's what we want to do with these experiences. We want to put the common experience into a highly recognized, institutionalized space to kind of create this friction and this acceptance And again, each dish had like either a joke attached to it for the person, or a note or a nod to a memory that we had with them. And that one happened to be one of the most important ones. Like collard greens and sweet potatoes was my intention for Nikita. And then for Janice Bond, we served her something similar when we first met her in person. So it's like, we just sort of, once we knew who the 6 people were, we had to remember and study and understand who they were so that they were on the plate.
Flawless, y'all were. Wow.
All this.
Well, I think, I mean, it's almost 3 o'clock and I just want to be mindful of time. I know that we've had, all doing amazing things, and it's been such a journey to get us to today. And I am eternally grateful of each experience that I had with y'all creating the work that we put forth into the world. And I guess in terms of closing questions, I would love to hear, where do we go from here? I mean, the idea of this panel was called Searching for Visionary Futures. And obviously we touched on a lot of points in like time, capitalism, things that are like almost feel so oppressive at sometimes, but yet y'all have, in quoting, breaking free of Y2K, we all have all done such amazing high level intelligent thinking in the way these projects have come together. What happens next? Like, where do y'all go from here? And that anybody can answer in any order.
Yeah, I think actually, so technology kind of inspired, like I worked with a producer that I work with a lot, Boyson, but then he also brought on another like friend of ours who's queer, Kid Pharma, and like the sounds that we made together, like from technology and like the visuals kind of inspired a bigger project that I'm working on now that will release like later. And it was almost like it's like now the mood board for like a bigger like music project that I'm going to be working on. So that's exciting.
Go for it.
Again, the enormous support and the documentation, like just like photos, from being able to afford a photographer, not just a videographer, but being able to afford a photographer, so that after our dinner, when we posted the images from the photographer, we got like all these hits from like not just Outsmart magazine, but like different food foundations and queer food foundations in New York and Oakland and like different places. People are like, we'll pay you to come here, bring it here. And we're like, wait. So it's like, you guys set the foundation, right? We can never take less than what we got this time. So there's only upward mobility. Like, why go backwards? Why let people use our skills and our creative minds for less money? Even people reached out to us while we were waiting for this project to happen, and we're like, we can't take $200 for that. No. So it's just like, you have to keep on creating the prestige and building, and yeah, anyway, I went on a tangent.
Amen. Amen to that. What's it called? I hope to continue the guided meditations. If you're interested in creating one, please hit me up. But in terms of where do we go from here, I'm just focusing on grieving right now, and I hope that everyone takes time to do that as well. Yeah.
I'm gonna second what Antonia said, where I'm not necessarily thinking about what's up next. I'm mostly just trying to get a lot of sleep and take my vitamins and stuff. Drink a lot of water,
I think that's real. I mean, I think, I look back in the way in which we worked and the way everything has kind of come together in the time period. I feel like time was almost collapsed. Like, it doesn't even feel like we began like the project's live. Like, we started all the production stuff in February pretty much. And it was such a sprint, and I'm excited to see like the pause, reflection, and then like what happens later down the line. And Because, and I think, you know, Antonius, you said like to grieve and to like enjoy what we did. And it's exciting to, you know, think about, I'm excited to see where y'all go in the future. But I think as y'all all said, like, yeah, like there's some things now that if we really want to think about the future, we really need to sit with and, you know, continue contemplating as we're moving and intentionally moving forward, you know, like that's that intentionality that we talked a little bit about. Well, I think it's 3 o'clock now. Again, I just want to say thank you to all of y'all for being part of this process and experience. It has been such an amazing opportunity. And you know, like there's still a lot that, you know, the show is going to stay up on our DiverseWorks YouTube for a little bit. All the performances are done. I think that, you know, when we are able to experience performances in time, like some of these, I've got to figure out how they live again, because like Y2K's video, like to see that in person, and even Chandrika's performance, like the online process sometimes does not give it justice. So hopefully, you know, we'll work on figuring that out. Also, too, just to nod that, you know, all of this work that we did also scaffold off of an exhibition called Collective Presence, as well as Bayou City BL, which were part of 2 earlier projects I did at DiverseWorks, Bayou City BL being a queer, non-binary performance night, and then Collective Presence, this kind of micro-residency experiments in the gallery to kind of get us contemplating. So to kind of see this 3rd chapter of the future, and y'all, for all of y'all to be a part of it, I'm really blessed. So thank y'all again so much. Thank you to those that watched and tuned in. If you have any questions about any of the artists' work, you can find their social media handles and their websites on our website, diverseworks.org. They each have a page as part of Visionary Futures. Shout out to Jay Clark and Frank Hernandez, who have been our predominant photographer, videographer, Mo Penders, Micah Dane, Gabby Iggy, my intern, who has been on site for most of these performances, as well as the DiverseWorks staff. Yes, taking Polaroids. So thank you all so much for the creation of everything. Everybody have a wonderful night. Before the artists leave, I'd kind of like to get like a Zoom screenshot, if that's possible. So yeah. Jen, just let us know when we're no longer streaming live.
I don't know how.